huge Jet fan, CEO of VaynerMedia, Vayner Sports. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for hopping on aboard. What did you think about? Because we haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah.
What do you take about with the entire Jet season this year, Gary?
Well, it was challenging for us fans out here. I think it was a season that really pushed the envelope on us diehards. But it's 97. I'm an old dog. I'm 45 now, so 97. 95 and 96 are pretty fresh. So we've been through these rodeos before. Listen, when you go all the way to kind of quote unquote rock bottom, you can start the process in the other direction. And to be frank, the whole time it became, me personally, I'm just so uncomfortably in belief of Joe D that, and I know how to build an organization. It takes time. So I've had that kind of light at the tunnel where I felt that he's the right man for the job. And that's the first time I felt that in a long time. And it has me excited.
I'm not trying to rub salt in the wound here, Gary. I'm really just interested. If we had a camera in your house or wherever you were watching what happened in the Rams game, what would we have seen?
Listen, I don't want to bull crap anyone, and players need to play, and I root for my guys, and I know what they were doing, but I'd be lying to you and anybody else if I didn't prefer the leverage of having the number one pick. I'm probably more pro Sam than a lot of people, and I wanted that leverage because I think that could be an all-time James Harden-like haul if Joe decided that he wanted to build around Sam. So I was disappointed, period.
Gary, who do you think what kind of characteristics, traits do you think should be in the next Jet head coach?
I think that it's very clear to me that an NFL head coach's ability for him to lead the team culture-wise, making sure all three units of the team are aligned, emotional intelligence, a leader of men, somebody that really understands discipline if somebody's not following the protocol. But discipline comes in the Parcells historic way, but discipline comes in like kindness too. There's a lot of bubbly, smiley, positive head coaches that are just matter of fact about their discipline if you're not following the rules. So, I'm not overtly, would I prefer, as every Jet fan, go offensive minded? Sure. Do I think the youngster out of SF, defensive coordinator, has a lot of people's attention and excitement? Sure, that's fine. But to me, it's, I just genuinely want the human being that is a people person but has discipline and has some skill set to manage. I mean, managing your offensive and defensive and special teams coach really matters. Having real relationships with players really matters. Emotional intelligence is what's going to get it done. And the fact that the general manager has that in comparison to the ones we've had in the past is a very big deal because his judgment on that is going to matter. And
Gary
by the way,
yeah.
On the record, I apologize, Max.
Go ahead.
And it also played out in the way we drafted. When you draft players based on how fast they run, right, that instead of who they are as a human, you take the linebacker out of Florida with the third pick, and he's on the Seahawks practice squad a week later because you have to cut him. Like humanity matters. I'm shocked that people don't get it.
Gary, though, you are a CEO, you're a serial entrepreneur, so you're able to not only lead a team, but you're also able to identify talent and kind of like look into the future and say what's going to work, what's not going to work. What makes you so high on Sam using the skill sets that you have? What makes you high on Sam and think that he's the guy?
Listen, I'm going to make this very clear. I am too affected by how much I like the human, and I'm a Jets fan, right? So let's start with that.
Okay.
That being said, there's just so little clean data on Sam that the thought that everyone's going to use the body of work the last 3 years to make the definitive we have to move on when he's as young as he is an interesting thing. Like, listen, I get it, and very honestly, I'm so blindly in belief of Joe D and he has much more data than I do around Sam that I'm going to be happy with what Joe Douglas does. That's just the truth. That being said, I genuinely believe if Sam is not in New York, he's going to make the Ryan Tannehill story feel small. I believe it.
I'm with you. I mean, I'm still a Darnold believer. Here's the issue, Gary, that I had with the Jets is, and I know Sam didn't develop here, they put nothing around him the last 2 years.
No kidding. No kidding. Like, listen, I almost didn't want to do this show because I was worried that Mags was going to recall our argument about Josh Allen and Sam, and I'm clearly not winning that argument at this point. But when you
Gary, give it a couple minutes. We're going to get there, Gary.
Actually, pause on that for a second. Just hold, because let's rewind just a couple months when you were a mystery guest on our show, and so gracious to do that, Gary. You're so generous with your time. But this was part of the exchange that you and I had that day. Go ahead, Dove.
All right, back to Jets talk here, Gary. Darnold, what do you expect this year from Sam?
Well, I expect him to end up being a much better player than Josh Allen if we want to go there right now with Matt.
That one hurt, Gary. That one hurt. Care to comment, sir?
Listen, life is a marathon, not a sprint. Listen, my brother and I, AJ, had an exchange the other day and said something to the degree of like, crap. Ultimately, it might just not matter with Josh of all the things that we think are not right. He just might be too talented, almost like Brett Favre. So listen, I mean, knowing he's a good human being, but listen, I hate Josh Allen. Like, let's not,
you hate him, Gary.
Yes, Mag. Now listen, we're talking sports talk now. As a human,
sports
he's a
hate,
lovely
not
kid.
real
I know.
hate.
I know a lot about him. I'm very close with Jordan Palmer, who trains a lot of these guys. Like, I know he's a good kid. I know that. But let there be no confusion. I, Gary Vaynerchuk, hate Josh Allen because I am a Jets fan, and I'm not going to. I'm not happy for Buffalo. I love everybody on Twitter's like, Gary, but aren't you happy for Browns and Bills fans? I'm like, no, I'm not happy.
I always thought that was a misnomer too. As a Bills fan, I don't feel like anyone really cares about the Bills,
Matt,
and I think Jets fans hate the Bills. I know that.
Were you thrilled for us in 2010 and 11 because we sucked for so long? No, you didn't.
No, it just reinforced how bad my team was and how many terrible decisions they've made. Then they hired Rex. Rex, Gary.
Yes,
that was the low point.
Mags, I rooted for the Colts last weekend like they were 69 Jets.
If it wasn't for Frank Reich, Gary, the Colts might have won that game. Gary, your belief in Darnold, is it so strong that you would have passed up Lawrence with the number one overall pick?
Honestly, and I mean this, and that, like everybody who's listening right now, we're fans. Yes, I have a sports agency, and so I have a lot of data on the football side. The truth is, I'm not sure, and the truth is, I really struggle with everything I know, and I've watched a lot of Lawrence, and just again have a little insight to him. Like, I truly struggle in seeing how that kid's not going to be successful, and so to be frank, like with what I know, which is more limited than every GM and every scout, but from what I know, I would absolutely be open to have traded that pick if the Falcons come along and give me 3 number ones, 2 2s and 3 3s. Sure. I mean, we have a lot of holes, and quarterbacks come in all sorts of places. I don't have to remind Jets or Bills fans the 6th round pick in New England. Russell Wilson's a 3rd round pick. Like, Lamar went 3rd. The Jets could take a quarterback with the Seahawks pick that has real potential. Like, there's a lot you can do. And with Trevor Lawrence and that number 1 pick, you could have seen the most iconic trade of all time. And Jet fans, let's be honest with ourselves, we have substantial holes.
It's a full rebuild.
It's
a full rebuild. Full rebuild, which is why the coaching this is why the coaching search is so interesting, because it's, you have these talented coordinators who are getting second opportunities, like you had Arthur Smith last night from the Titans, and you had Robert Saleh from the 49ers, but you do have this like Doug Peterson wild card out there, Gary, where he gets fired by the Eagles, and he does have the credentials of winning a Super Bowl. This team, your team, the Jets, need a lot. When Doug Peterson was fired, were you interested in that?
That one was easy for me to react to because Joe knows him so well. So from my standpoint, I didn't even allow myself to begin to think. I said, wow, if he's the guy, this is going to be a no-brainer. And if he's not the guy, well, he really knows what he needs to know about Doug, and he's not going to be here. So to me, that one I still haven't even begun to think about him from that standpoint. Really, I mean that.
Gary, what was your reaction to the big trade in the NBA yesterday with James Harden going from Houston to the Nets?
I like what happened for Houston. Like, geez, like that's exciting. You get to kind of restart. Like, I think I think James Harden has an unbelievable amount of pressure on his legacy. And I don't know James well enough to know if he cares about that or not. I really just genuinely don't know. Some people do, some people don't. But if he doesn't win with, I think KD is the best player in basketball. I really do. And so I think when the Nets better win, because if this becomes the Paul Pierce thing all over again for the Nets, they're dead for a decade.
Yeah.
Different circumstance, I think, though, just because of where the players are in their career. Gary,
I couldn't agree more. By the way, Max, that's such a good observation. This is not 36-year-old Paul Pierce. These are guys that still have real legs to them. But this one's going to be the best case study of the conversation we started with, which is, are the three superstars able to create a culture, and is Nash able to navigate them to a place of winning?
And I think Durant has to be the one to navigate it too. Nash also, and he's got the bona fides to be able to command everyone in the room. But Durant's got to make this work, because this is his creation, I think, to a certain extent. Now, and Gary, you're in a unique position because you have a sports agency, so obviously you have the players' best interests in mind. You've said over and over you're going to own the Jets one day. You want to own the Jets. You want to be an owner, and so you can kind of think about things from both angles, like. Did you think what James Harden has done and Anthony Davis and forcing their way out of situations like 2 years basically before their contracts are up, do you think that's bad for the sport? Do you think that it's gone too far?
That's a really great question, Max. I think it's a mix is my hot take. So let me break it down here. I think that the world is based on leverage. And I believe that the players have disproportionately, which is great, good for them, gain the leverage. So I think of it as business is business. I think it's bad for the fans of smaller cities long term. To me, that's my only concern. I'm not going to worry about this, because when I'm an owner, I'm going to love my guys and they're going to love me back because I love them first. And so I'm just incredibly confident in my player relationships. One of the biggest reasons I wanted to do a sports agency was to get so deep in this culture that when I own the Jets, I'm going to have such compassion, understanding, and empathy that it's going to give me leverage from a psychology standpoint to understand how to build continuity and avoid situations like this. I'm not worried about James or Anthony. They're doing what's right for their family, and everybody is. You are, I am, Moose is, Al and Mike who are listening right now. Everyone does what's right for their family. What I'm focused on is if you live and you're a Memphis Grizzlies fan and you have Ja Morant, you're almost already pessimistic. Yes, you're going to have the occasional incredible human that has this vision for themselves like Giannis, but more commonly, if it's not good after the rookie contract, and I mean real good, I mean, even with Steph and what happened in Golden State, if they didn't draft their brains out with Clay and Draymond in the second round, who knows how that story ends up. So the pressure to be a small market team and draft your face off in back-to-back years to give you any shot to avoid these situations, just I feel unfortunate to that fan base.
Yeah, good point, Gary. The one thing with Harden, and I get players using the leverage, I just hated the way the last 3 weeks, out of shape, ripping teammates as he did the other night, not giving him much effort on the court. You mentioned his reputation. I think a lot of people are looking at James Harden, even as brilliant of a career as he's had, a lot of people's eyes, he's kind of muddied, he's muddied his reputation with the way they handled his ouster in Houston.
Yep, that's the beauty of life. Everything has ramifications and opportunities. And to your point, I'm sure there's ungodly amounts of people who are not fond of his actions, and that's, you pay the consequences. He clearly, I assume, is either wired that way as a man and or felt that it was the way to give him leverage to get what he wanted. And, that's how the cookie crumbles, as they say.
Gary Vee is joining us, of course, the serial entrepreneur. He's got Vayner Media, Vayner Sports. He's a 5-time New York Times best-selling author. And, Gary, one of the things that you've really we've talked about this a couple of times, when you're looking at things to invest in, you got really into sports cards, really into sports cards. You were all in. Are you still now focusing on that, or have you focused your attention elsewhere in terms of where you're investing right now?
Well, Max, you know this show should not even be on the air anymore, because if you two listened to me when I told you to get serious about sports cards, you'd be retired and on some beach right now. So I'm very, very disappointed in you two. Let's start.
You're right
there.
about that, Gary. That is a very fair point.
Honestly, bad job.
I'm
terrible
not confused, guys. It's a terrible job.
You laid it out for us. Yep.
I literally looked at you in the face and begged you to do this. I mean,
Gary, you actually brought a box of basketball cards to the studio and said, "Open up some packs, get used to this, start doing this, invest."
Moose, I did that on the last day before I shut down for COVID. I wasn't even supposed to do that, but I'm like, I've got to make Moose and Mags millionaires. I'm going in, risking my life. I'm going in studio, and when they see the passion in my eyes and we open these packs, they're going to realize all this ridiculous knowledge they have. Mags brings up the age of Harden and Durant against Pierce. That's exactly right. All of you guys know so much, and it's beautiful that you have this incredible show that millions love. However, if I'm going to give you data now. If you took let's say you had good savings and you took $30,000 and bought a Michael Jordan perfect graded rookie card when I was in studio for $30,000, today it's $270,000.
That's
Gary,
crazy.
And by the way, Mags, I'm actually, you know what? Wait a minute. I'm playing this all wrong. Mags, how about this one? Josh Allen rookie cards are 40x what they were when I was in studio.
I know. Monzo told me if I had 25 grand, I could have bought.
No, real quick. Yeah. Hold on, Moose. I'm sorry here. If Max put $3,000 into Josh Allen rookie cards, she'd have $100,000.
But Gary, shouldn't I just be investing in things I love?
Here, Gary. So where should we? I mean, listen. I mean, my wife's going to come down and shut the lights off. What should we start now? What should we be investing in? Because
give us another chance, Gary. Give us another chance.
Because our producer Brian Monzo, he's on eBay every night, right? And he wanted us to. He's buying cards left and right, like all over the place. Like he's buying PSA 9s, rookie cards all over the place. He's investing every single night, Gary.
Yes. He's going to own the fans soon. Guys, you have to understand. This has happened. Let me say this. Listen, I'm sorry, and I'll come back on the show when I have it. I don't have the same level of 1,000% conviction that I did 3 years ago and then a year ago, like about cards. But I will tell you that there's still a long, long, long way to go with cards. And for me, for you two, it still comes down to the same thing. Is there a player that you genuinely believe in that is, in your opinion, underrated in their skill set or how the league sees them? And is it somebody that you want to buy some perfectly graded rookie cards in, because it will work out if you are right. And if you're wrong, you'll lose money. It's not complicated, but it's a far more strategic version of sports betting. I pushed my friend Mike Playa to get into it. He knows about sports. He loves it, but he half-assed it. He made a little bit. He did great with LeBron's, but it's just so obvious. It's so obvious that this is what's happening. And so sports fans, any human that's listening to this program right now that doesn't spend 5 to 10 hours to get educated, because that's the key, because you can get burned real fast if you don't know what you're doing. Spend 5 to 10 hours listening to podcasts and listening to YouTube shows on what the current state of the sports market is, and then take their gambling DNA and deploying it through investing in players. It's a huge miss.
Gary, what if you had to pick a player? Give us a little bit of advice. What player are you investing in right now in rookie cards?
I think LeBron James rookie cards are so wildly underpriced. I also think Kevin Durant's underpriced, but those are expensive. You know, the best LeBron's $22,000. That's not something everyone here is going to buy. The problem was 18 months ago, 24 months ago, when I was yelling about this, they were $1,000. This has really happened. So, you know, I'm trying to think of a young player that I think is grossly underestimated in comparison to their skill set. You know, nothing really stands out right now. Right now, I'm spending all my time and energy buying Jordans and LeBrons because they're all going to become the Mona Lisas and the most expensive stuff as this continues to fly. But if you love Drew Lock, if you really believe in LaMelo Ball, there's going to be some opportunities.
Gary Vaynerchuk is our guest. Just a couple more minutes with you, Gary, and thank you so much for doing this. We always love getting access to your mind. And, you know, I think there's a lot of people who are listening to us who maybe have struggled a bit during the pandemic. Their businesses maybe have struggled. Obviously, there's been a lot there. If you have advice for people who have gone through a tough time with this pandemic from a business sense, and you being a CEO and a successful one, what advice would you have for people?
I think that I think that it's really about patience and really understanding self-awareness and just really taking a breath, right? Like, to me, everything's about self-awareness and self-esteem. Like, what are you good at? What do you like? Don't worry if your dad told you you were going to be a loser or your best friend said this. Like, tune out every negative voice. That doesn't mean become delusional and some of this, like, I can be anything. No, if I could be anything, I'd be the quarterback, head coach, and owner and GM of the Jets at the same time and winning Super Bowls and not be frustrated. You can't be everything, but you can be something. And I really genuinely believe that. And I think the internet actually makes it practical in a way that it wasn't for our great-grandparents. So I would say tune out negativity, get practical, learn what's going on the internet, understand what the Clubhouse app that just came out that's getting hot is, learn about cryptocurrency if you're excited about the Bitcoin thing, but do it with education. I think this audience needs to get very serious about sports cards because I think they'll do extremely well because they know things. And so it's about, being self-aware. What are you good at? What do you like? And then it's about making sure that, like, cutting out all the negativity, whether it's the political climate, whether it's your grandma that's always been a little nasty, whether it's your girlfriend, just like negativity always is the wrong answer.
Gary, you mentioned it. That's what I want to ask you about. Are you a crypto guy, Bitcoin? I know there's some detractors, some believers. Where you fall in on cryptocurrency?
I'm a big believer in blockchain, and I believe cryptocurrency is a foregone conclusion. I bought my Bitcoin in 2014, Moose. So, listen, this is what I do. I anticipate consumer trends, and so yeah, I think there's a lot to learn. And do I think Bitcoin can go down from 33,000 a coin? Sure, it can. Like, the ebbs and flows. And does Bitcoin, is Bitcoin Yahoo or is Bitcoin Google? If we were talking search engines, right? All three of us are old enough to remember when Yahoo was Google and now Google is Google. And so, yep. But I think it's far along. I think Ethereum is far along. It's a category that people should check out. But right now it's so hot in everybody's mind to a lot of the listeners. Meanwhile, the listeners know everything about every rookie wide receiver that played football this year, and they think that, and they watched enough Raiders game to know that Jerry Jeudy is going to have a good sophomore year, and thus can make an absolute fortune if we're talking monetizable around buying Jeudy rookie cards because they're underpriced because he had a soft rookie year.
Wait, Gary, sorry, just to follow up on the sports cards for a moment. Does it matter the market size? Like, obviously LeBron James, was drafted by Cleveland. So, like, if I look at Justin Jefferson and I feel like he's an unbelievable wide receiver, but he plays in a smaller market, does that play in at all to the sports cards that I buy or no?
Not if he becomes Randy Moss, whose cards do extremely well. Like, does it play in? Yes, it does. Because there's more money in New York and LA and Miami, and thus those people are buying their favorite players and that they're on their team. But if they become really all-time guys, the key is you have to be careful because Justin Jefferson is now priced very heavily because he was so remarkable, so you're buying at a high. That's why I bring up the Jerry Jeudy thing. This is where information matters, right? Yeah. That's why you missed your moment, Max, with Josh Allen, right? There was still a debate if he was good. I mean, I don't care. I actually now want Josh Allen to win Super Bowls so that you've lost out on millions because that'll make me feel better.
Gary, I hate that it's become you versus me, but you know what? If they win a Super Bowl, you're going to be my first call.
Gary, last one for me on the cards, right? Because I think it's a great conversation. A lot of people are investing in it. You have, and you advised everyone out there to invest in it. What about if you're buying online? And would you pay to have them PSA buy the ones that are PSA graded, or would you not?
Yeah, I mean, everybody again get educated on this, but grading matters. I would. I mean, eventually you can get smart enough that you can buy them raw and then figure out how to get them graded. But I do think learning about the grading part is a safer bet. And I'm trying, again, 10 hours of homework. Forget about the hyperbole of this phone call and this interview. Please do your homework if you get interested, everybody. But yes, I'm a fan of graded cards.
Gary V, always a pleasure, Gary. We appreciate you cutting out 20 minutes for us. You were great. And
by the way,
good luck to your Jets, all right?
I say thanks, Max. Good news. Actually, Little Lou, my right hand, texted me during this interview. If she invested $25K on Josh on March 1st when you were there, she would be at $395,000.
You're just trying to make me feel bad at this point, Gary. Trying to make me feel bad.
Tell Lou thank you.
Max, actually, I love you. And what I'm trying to actually do is in 9 years when I tell you to go buy fluffy, wings or this burger company or whatever the heck it is next in 4, 6, 7 years. Correct.
I'll listen. I didn't believe in Josh Allen though when the last time we were talking. I didn't believe in him.
Gary, Maggie didn't start believing in Josh Allen until the Bronco game.
Last week.
That's when it
No,
turned.
like literally last week, and he almost blew the game last week with his fumble.
Yeah.
I was running after the bandwagon, like, guys, wait.
See you, Gary. We appreciate it.
Love you guys.
Gary, thank you.
You got it. Gary Vaynerchuk.